Hey everybody, welcome back to the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I, of course, am John Knopick. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. We love seeing all of your fresh faces and ears here inside this chaotic cornucopia of weirdness that we call the Smorgasbord. Today, I've decided to dive into a topic that's been in the center of American curiosity, suspicion, and debate for over 60 years. Long time. And that, of course, is COVID-19. I'm kidding. And it's, of course, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I did mention we would be finally diving into conspiracy theories, and we've decided to do just that here on this episode of the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. And, these conspiracy theories and everything have grown up like weeds inside of or outside of a Texas field. So things have definitely grown and taken on a life of their own as time has gone on. Now, I know to some people, especially have older listeners out there, this might be a heavy topic, but don't worry, guys. Inside here, the Smorgasbord, we do keep it lively because if there's one thing that the JFK assassination has given us, and it's a never-ending buffet, play on words, of wild theories, mysterious characters, and enough government documents to wallpaper the Pentagon. Because you got a lot of documents, especially what's been recently declassified and thrown up on those public websites. And as time goes on, hopefully with Trump being back in office, there'll be more declassification and disclosure in regards to what's happened. But let's be honest, guys. Who doesn't love a good mystery? You got your Sherlock Holmes, you got your Matlocks, you got Murder, She Wrote, if you're going to go old school with Angela Lansbury. Who doesn't love a good mystery? Or if you want to go cartoon, be old school, go Scooby-Doo. Especially when you've got one that involves shadowy figures, secret files, and a cast of characters that would make even the biggest Hollywood directors and writers jealous. This one's got it all, folks. And I mean, this story, as I said, it's got everything. You got a very charismatic president who wanted to make sure our world and our country was going back on the right track, which in his viewpoint meant, ending the Federal Reserve, which was something that needed to be ended. And only reason it was started, unfortunately, was for what they said was for good purposes. But in reality, it basically made us a slave to taxes and allowing the government to hold on to our money and then allowing them to give us our crumbs back at the end of each year, something that hopefully, if things continue to go the way they are starting to here now in the present day, 2025, we can finally get rid of income tax once and for all, be replaced with tariffs and other things like that. But you had your charismatic president back then. You had a glamorous first lady. I mean, Jackie Onassis. Come on, guys. I was born in 1980, but I mean, if you see her in those photos and videos from back in the 50s and 60s, I mean, she's as stoic and breathtaking as all get out. I mean, she truly was the yang to John F. Kennedy's yang. They complemented each other exceptionally well. You had a city that was known at the time for very high political tension. Dallas was outspoken, to say the least, way more than they are now. Now, if you want to look at cities with like political tension and stuff, you'd be looking more like bigger cities in California, some in New York, Chicago for sure, DC, of course. And you also have that cast of suspects mixed in with them as well that, would be a cast of suspects that I think would make the writers of the Games of Thrones, J.R. and George R.R. Martin jealous, because you had everybody, all the players involved were definitely a cast of characters to say the least. Now, if you've ever watched a movie and thought, no way on the earth could that happen in real life, just remember that real life is oftentimes stranger than fiction. I mean, whether you're a diehard, Oswald acted alone, it was a single bullet, magic bullet theory, and he was the only one, it was nobody else, just him and lone gunman believer, a grassy Knoll truther saying, hey, there was you had Oswald trying to take the shot from the school book depository, but at the same time, you also had somebody in the grassy Knoll making sure that if he didn't get the job done, they would, or just here for the wild ride. There are also other theories too. Like if you watch some of the videos footage slowed down, it even looks like potentially JFK's Secret Service agent driver turned around and you see a flash. Who knows? I mean, the CIA and the Secret Service and the government at the time, they were deeply rooted in corruption and still are, unfortunately, although we're trying to get that cleaned up. So it wouldn't be surprising if they put in somebody in there to finish him off if the book depository option failed. As I said, if you're in for this wild ride and you want to know more about it and dig into it a little bit deeper, you're absolutely in the right place. So guys, do me a favor, if you'd be so kind, grab your tinfoil hats, pour yourself a drink, grab a heaping full bowl full of what we're going to be serving here on the smorgasbord, and let's dive in here just a couple of moments. Always, guys, I want to hear from you. This is how I drive future episodes. I need your feedback. I need your analytics. I need your support. I need to know what you guys want to hear. I need to know what you guys want to listen to and see if you're watching on YouTube on future episodes. So as always, shoot me an email or go reach out on my social platforms. I'm at the Smorgasbord JK, trying to come up with something catchier, but right now it's what I got. The Smorgasbord JK on all social media platforms, or John at Knopick, Knopick, Ventures, VENTURES.com. So you can reach me by old school email, or again on all social media platforms at the Smorgasbord JK. Tell me, guys, when you reach out to me, let me know about your favorite JFK theories. Give me all your off the wall ones that you've heard in passing that just blew your mind, either from a wow, that could be real standpoint, or oh my God, what was that dude, or what was that person smoking standpoint. Feel free to just drop a line and say hi. As I said before and again, this show is just as much yours as it is mine, and I am proud to be able to give you guys a little bit of an opportunity to step back, maybe get some fresh perspectives, and just have fun for a little while and take a break from the world. So we're going to dive into the JFK conspiracy theory here in just a moment. But first, we got to take a quick little break as we normally do on the show before our segment starts. So stick around, keep listening, and you're joining us here inside the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I'm John Knopick. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK, or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, thank you so much. Welcome back. This is the Smorgasbord, and I am John Knopick. Now, let's dive in, guys. And how do we do that? Well, let's set the scene. What really happened in Dallas? It's November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. Political tension at an all-time high, especially down deep in the heart of Texas. President John F. Kennedy is riding in his open-top limousine through Dealey Plaza, waving to the crowds, as he did. They wanted him to do the bubble top one, but he wanted to meet the crowds. He wanted to be a man among the people, so he went with top-down option. The weather was absolutely picturesque. Beautiful, beautiful day in Dallas. The mood was very festive. You still had your protesters. You had those that weren't approving of what Kennedy was starting to roll out, but for the most part, everybody was in a good mood and happy to see the leader of the free world. And the city was also buzzing with excitement as well, seeing him in there, seeing he's going to be going to the luncheon later on and talking about his plans for the presidency and whatnot. The motorcade route was it was such a big, large event that the motorcade route itself was even published in the newspaper to allow people to line the streets, hoping to catch the glimpse of that young, charismatic president and, of course, as I said, his glamorous wife, Jackie Onassis. Now, Kennedy's trip again to Texas was a very, very big deal. He was trying to mend political fences that was crucial, in a state that was very crucial for his re-election campaign. The governor, John Connolly, at the time was with him, as was his wife, Nellie. The Secret Service, as you would expect, was on high alert because there were many nefarious people out there that did not want Kennedy continuing his presidency, or in some cases, unfortunately, his life. But in security in 1963, obviously, is nothing like it is today. You don't have the technology to scan everything, have drones in the sky, have all of these multiple ways to protect our leader. No bulletproof glass, unfortunately, no armored cars, just a convertible, a waving president, and a city full of adoring fans and some not so adoring fans. And right around 12:30, as the motorcade turned down onto Elm Street, a place that I actually have been to years ago, I thought it was very weird, very odd to be in that spot where it all went down. But as the motorcade turned down onto Elm Street, the fabled shots rang out. And then, as you expect, chaos erupted. The president slumped over. Governor Connolly, sitting in front of him, was also hit. Nellie Connolly later said, "I never thought that this would happen, especially in Texas." The car went and sped onward to Parkland Memorial Hospital, but unfortunately for the President of the United States, it was too late. And at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, the President of the United States, John Francis Kennedy, was pronounced dead. Country was, of course, in absolute shock. Why wouldn't they be? The world was in mourning at the time, too, because not only was the president very popular here in the States, but around the world as well. They loved his vision. They loved what he was going for, and they found him very easy to talk to and negotiate with. Walter Cronkite, and I watch these videos all the time. Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in news at the time. No spin, no slant, not like it is today. He cut it black and white, right down the middle, gave you nothing but the facts. He even choked up as he announced the news on live television. People wept openly in the streets, as you would expect. Schools were closed. Businesses were actually shut down. Whereas nowadays, we don't know. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. It was one of those moments where everyone remembers exactly where they were. You hear them talking about 9/11 and where were you when 9/11 happened, or where were you, when this happened. But everybody remembers, if you were alive then, where you were when Kennedy was gunned down. And for when I was a kid, remember my own family, my mom and dad, and briefly my uncle and grandma talking about that day as well. My grandma used to say that it was excuse me. At the time, it was the first time she'd ever seen my grandfather cry. I didn't get to know him because, unfortunately, he passed away right before I was born. Hence the reason I'm named John and not David. Yeah, she'd never seen him cry before. She said he was an exceptionally tough guy, really thick-skinned. I guess that's kind of where I get it from. He was a craftsman, worked with his hands, never showed much emotion at all. But that day, he just sat in his chair, silent, with tears running down his face. It just blows me away to think of him like that. I have memories from what I was told about him, but that would have blown me away to see that. It was like the whole country just lost its innocence in that moment, just gone. But the story, of course, does not end there. Within 70 minutes, about just a little before 3 o'clock, police arrested Lee Harvey Oswald, a 24-year-old former Marine, in a movie theater, believe it or not. He was actually charged with killing a Dallas police officer at the time, and soon after with assassinating President Kennedy. Oswald claimed the entire time that he was a patsy, that he was set up by the nefarious deep state. He didn't say deep state, but he knew what he meant. And he never got to tell his story in court because, coincidentally, a gunman gunned him down as well by the name of Jack Ruby, and we'll get into him a little bit later. As it was 2 days later, as he was being transported from jail, he was shot and killed by Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner, live on national television. So this one was covered because he was being led to his arraignment, and they caught the shooting live and in living color. Now, for a second, let's pause and think about that. The alleged assassin of the president is murdered on live television before he can even stand trial by a guy who, at the time, had mob connections in front of the entire country. If you wrote this as a movie, people would say that it is way too far-fetched. And you'd probably be right. Now, the official story, according to the Warren Commission, was that Oswald acted alone. Or at least that's what it was when the story was officially released at the time. Of course, as you know now, things have changed since the release of those declassified files, saying that he fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, but almost immediately after that was released, people started asking questions because the numbers and the evidence and everything just did not add up. Witnesses reported hearing shots from different directions. Some smoke or movement on the grassy knoll. The so-called magic bullet theory, where one bullet supposedly caused 7 wounds in 2 men. Yeah, that became a national punchline. So that one definitely held absolutely whatsoever. And then there's the Zapruder film, of course, one of the most famous pieces of non-Hollywood media ever captured here in the States. Abraham Zapruder, who is a Dallas dressmaker, captured the assassination on his 8mm camera. That film has been analyzed frame by frame by frame for decades, and it's still at the center of the debate. And as you know, I can't help but think about how this would play out today with all of the technology now, everybody having cell phones, again, as I said, drones in the sky, you'd have a lot more security options for the president. And honestly, guys, if you remember just less than a year ago, we nearly had the exact same thing to an extent play out on live television when Butler, Pennsylvania happened and Trump was millimeters away from becoming the next JFK. A charismatic leader who's trying to undo all of the corruption and gunk and crap that's going on behind the scenes in DC with the government and the people there not wanting him to make it. So, yeah, we almost had that happen in real life. Imagine, guys, if X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, existed in 1963. The hashtags alone, hashtag Grassy Knoll, hashtag Oswald Patsy, hashtag Umbrella Man, hashtag Babushka Lady. It'd be trending for weeks, and everybody in like Reddit, subreddits, and 4chan, if you use that, all of these online chat communities and things, they would be debunking it and doing the investigative work, tearing it down piece by piece. There'd be TikTok breakdowns of the Zapruder film, which would be weird to see. YouTube channels completely dedicated to analyzing every frame, and probably even a Netflix documentary or 2 would get tossed up as well. So, guys, what really did happen in Dallas? You know what I mean? Was it a lone gunman? Was the government involved from the standpoint of having the actual Secret Service agent taking him out? Was there somebody in the grassy knoll? Was there a completely third party that no one has even talked about that was involved? That's what we're going to try and dig into here today. But for now, the next segment up here in the smorgasbord is going to be the theories, suspects, and the magic bullet. All things that are very critical and crucial to determining exactly who and why caused the biggest, at the time, moment in at least American political history, if not American history. But we're going to dive into that here in a second. Time for another quick break here. We'll be right back here inside the smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Stick around, and we'll be right back after this quick ad break. Thanks for tuning in. Hey there, smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. And okay, guys, welcome back to the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. Now, let's dive in and talk about the theories, because there are absolutely more than you can count. The official version, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is the lone gunman theory. And that's that Oswald, the ex-Marine, disgruntled, etc., acted completely alone. Fired 3 shots within 6 seconds with a bolt-action rifle, and he didn't even, he wasn't even that good of a shooter beforehand with his military training. But yet he was able to fire 3 shots within 6 seconds, including 1 bullet that made its magical way around and caused all of those wounds in 2 different people. Yeah, that's why this one's one of the least likely of the theories. Ballistics experts, eyewitnesses, and even some members of the Warren Commission themselves have questioned over time whether that's even physically possible. And they've tried to recreate it, and even Jesse Ventura tried to recreate it. And you know how exceptional he was in the military, wasn't able to do it. Now, let's break down this magic bullet theory really quick. According to the commission, 1 bullet, commission exhibit number 399, entered Kennedy's back, exited his throat, hit Connolly in the back, shattered his rib, exited his chest, hit his wrist, and finally lodged in his thigh. Sit on that for a second, guys. 1 bullet caused all of those things to happen to 2 different people. Yeah. If you buy that, I've got some oceanfront property in Kansas that you would absolutely love. Now, again, the funniest part is they also mentioned the fact that the bullet did all of that without being significantly deformed. If you picture a bullet zigzagging through the air like it's in the Matrix, you're not alone. Even Senator Arlen Specter, who helped develop this theory, admitted that it was a stretch. He wanted to cover all of his bases, but even he was like, yeah. Now, let's be honest, guys. The magic bullet has become such a pop culture reference. Even Jerry Seinfeld did an entire episode about it. I'm not even a Seinfeld fan, but he did a whole episode about it. That tells you how much in the lexicon of the American fabric it's been woven into all over the place, zigzagging like the bullet itself. And now remember it was called the Magic Loogie. Seinfeld called it the Magic Loogie episode. Kramer and Newman broke down the trajectory of a spitball with the same intensity as the Warren Commission. Now that's how deep, as I said, and woven into the fabric it is in our culture. Now, let's get into a theory that might have a little more validity to it than the magic bullet theory, and that is but still a stretch, and that's the Grassy Knoll theory. Multiple witnesses at the time of the occurrence reported hearing shots from the direction of a small hill to the right of the motorcade itself. Some even claimed to see a puff of smoke or a figure behind the fence up by the knoll. The House Select Committee at the time on assassinations in 1979 concluded that there was probably a second gunman, and I am willing to bet there was, and that Kennedy was, quote, probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, but they couldn't say who was involved. Probably because they know who was involved, and if they said who was involved, they would be up S Creek without a paddle. Now, if you watch the Zapruder film footage and you see him then the motorcade coming down, and he's coming in front of your camera. Like you're literally looking straight at, and you see Kennedy in the back seat, and you see the drivers in the front. You're looking straight on at them. You're essentially taking on the viewpoint of the grassy knoll itself. So the way Kennedy's head snaps when he gets hit by the first bullet, most likely, of course, from Oswald's rifle, you see him snap, and you can tell it's coming from the back, and you can see his head moving that direction, and he's like holding his throat and stuff. But then what you see shortly thereafter is unfortunately the kill shot, and it's the one that makes the head just explode. And if it was coming from directly from the knoll, his head would have snapped the other direction. It would have went away from the camera, but instead his head snapped back and then went around, and then everything else happens, which leads people to believe that the shot came from the front, not from the side. So you're basically going to erase the grassy knoll theory just from the way his head moved after that second bullet got him. Now, of course, guys, let's not forget the suspects, the main players in this. The mafia, as we said, Jack Ruby was tied to the mob. The CIA, because they did not like the way Kennedy was starting to line stuff up and trying to do away with things that would undermine their corrupt agendas. The anti-Castro Cubans, they had it out for Kennedy too, especially with the Cuban Missile Crisis and everything that went on with that. The KGB, because it was told at one point that, at one time, Oswald visited Russia, so he could have had some KGB ties. Lyndon B. Johnson, the, at the time, sitting vice president, who was just one magic bullet away from becoming the leader of the free world. And of course, turns out he was pretty corrupt in his own way, and that became more evident as time went on, especially since the files were declassified. Even the Secret Service, and again, like I said, it wouldn't have shocked me if the driver was the one that made the fatal shot. At some point, though, they've all been accused, and rightfully so. The mafia had the motive, as I mentioned. Jack Ruby's ties. Bobby Kennedy, for example, was JFK's brother, was cracking down on organized crime at the time that this happened. The CIA, well, they were furious over the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Anti-Castro Cubans felt betrayed by Kennedy's lack of support, especially, as I said, with everything going on with the Cuban Missile Crisis and whatnot. And LBJ, well, some say, as I said, he had the most to gain. He would be the leader of the free world. He just had to get you-know-who out of the way. There's also the theory that, as I said, Oswald was a Soviet agent. He made a trip to Moscow. He could have gotten in with the KGB. He was already, unhappy with the Marines and how he was treated. So what better way to get back at him by joining the enemies? He defected to the USSR in 1959, married a Russian woman, excuse me, and returned to the United States under very mysterious circumstances. So there was a lot there that could have tied him and Russia to wanting this done. KGB files on Oswald, they remain classified to this day. So, and unlike declassifying things here in the States, I don't see Putin or Moscow being too quick to wanting to make those show the light of day. And then again, there's Jack Ruby. He claimed he killed Oswald to spare Jack Kennedy the pain of a trial, but many believe that he, in actuality, was silencing Oswald on behalf of the mob or even the government, because they were in bed together to a certain extent. I remember the first time I watched Oliver Stone's JFK. Everybody thought that was an exceptional piece of cinema, the way he put everything together and got it on the screen. I stayed up with my friends all night after we watched it, convinced, hell-bent on cracking the case. We were going to be the gumshoes that was going to blow the lid off of everything. We had printouts, we had highlighters, we had a whiteboard with arrows and question marks. We went the full nine. It was like True Detective before True Detective actually came out. Of course, we didn't solve anything, but we did order a lot of yummy, delicious pizza. Can't have anymore. And probably annoyed our neighbors with our back and to the left, back and to the left impressions. You know, it was like a game of Clue, but with real lives and real consequences. Now, what we're going to dive into next is going to be the evidence and the mysteries surrounding this entire unfortunate ordeal. But first, got to take another quick break. Thank you guys very, very much for tuning in, viewing, or listening here to the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Greatly appreciate you guys listening and giving me your feedback and your support. And we'll be right back with the next segment of the Smorgasbord after this quick ad break. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back to the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys very, very, very much for tuning in. Greatly appreciated. And as I've been mentioning, we are diving into the JFK conspiracy theory on this week's episode. And with that being said, let's dig into the evidence, because this is where things start to really get interesting. Now, first, of course, you got one of the biggest pieces of evidence out there, the Zapruder film. Frame 313, for those of you history buffs, you know that frame all too well, because that one shows the fatal headshot. As I said, and as Oliver Stone said in the JFK movie, motion of Kennedy's head during that fateful shot appears to go back and to the left, back and to the left, which again, as I had mentioned, suggests the shot came from the front and not the rear. Because if it came from the rear, his head would be going forward and maybe to the right or left, but not back. And this single frame has been debated endlessly for many, many, many moons. Some experts say it is consistent with a shot from behind. Others say it's proof of a second shooter. Now, I don't know why they would say it consistent of a shot from behind, because the first bullet absolutely would be consistent with a shot from behind, but that second one, the fatal one, definitely more ties to a shot from the front. Now let's talk about this Zapruder film as a pop culture artifact, because you know as well as I do, it absolutely is. It's been referenced in everything from one of my favorite shows of all time, The X-Files, all the way over to Family Guy. It's covered every end of the spectrum. There's even a scene in the movie Watchmen where the comedian is shown on the grassy knoll. So this film is so iconic. It's almost become a character in its own right. So I mean, if you haven't seen Watchmen, definitely watch Watchmen. Now the next piece of evidence is, of course, the autopsy. There are photos. If you're squeamish or you have a quick trigger on the gag reflex, you might not want to Google search it, but they are out there. Kennedy's body was rushed back to DC and the autopsy was performed at Bethesda Naval Hospital. But being so frantic and hectic, all of the procedures were very chaotic, not coordinated, not calculated, and key evidence, like the president's brain, for example, went missing. Pausing there for effect. Yeah. In case you didn't know this, or in case you weren't aware of this, you heard me right. The president's brain disappeared, and to this day has never been recovered. 60 years later, still don't know where the brain went. It was in his head at the autopsy. Ain't there now. I mean, it wasn't all there, but it ain't there now. The autopsy photos and x-rays have also been the subject of their very own controversies, with some experts claimed that they were altered or faked, which nowadays it'd be a lot easier to alter or fake them than it would back then, but it was still possible. Now, This whole brain mishap, misplacement makes me think of my own experience with lost paperwork. I know it's not the same, obviously, but go with me here. I once lost my entire tax return in the mail. The IRS, of course, when I let them know that that happened, told me I was basically blowing smoke up their butt. But if I can lose a stack of W-2s, maybe it's not so crazy that the government could lose something as important as the president's brain. Maybe that's just what they want us to think. Because maybe, if they actually did a full autopsy on the brain itself, they could see the way where the bullet, how the bullet came in, exited, et cetera, which could lean more towards the frontal shot theory as opposed to the back theory. Now, witnesses in Dallas at the time also reported seeing men with rifles in windows. Again, when frantic things are going on, your brain can tend to make you view things or see things that you're not really thinking that you're going to see. People said they saw people with guns on the grassy knoll, and even some say they even saw them in a storm drain. To me, all I saw, what I've heard, was only thing people were seeing in the storm drain was a dude with a lot of makeup on, with an umbrella, with a balloon and a poncho, saying you'll float too. Some claim to even see Secret Service agents on the knoll, even though none were officially assigned there. Again, when things are going on in such a frantic clip, your brain and your eyes are going to see things that may not have been there. Just the nature of the beast. And then there's the mysterious umbrella man. There's footage, there's pictures and things of a man in a full black suit, white shirt, black tie, holding a black umbrella. And he was holding this umbrella it was fully open on a sunny day, right where the shots were fired. He later testified that it was a protest against Kennedy's dad, because of issues with I believe it was with England. But the image still remains iconic, regardless of the why behind why he did it. The rifle that was found at the book depository was a cheap Italian Carcano. And if you know rifles, or if you're a marksman, or if you have any memory, or if you have any experience with weapons, the Carcano, especially back in those days, they were not highly regarded for their accuracy. And plus, when you add into the fact that Oswald's marksmanship scores in the Marines were average at best, you add that together with a rifle that's not dependable from an accuracy standpoint, you ain't going to get 3 shots off in 6 seconds and be able to nail perfectly the way these bullets hit Kennedy. And yet, again, they wanted you to supposedly believe that those 3 shots were accurate and nailed the target within under 6 seconds. And even as I said, some expert marksmen out there, including Jesse Ventura, tried to replicate the feat, and every single one of them struggled and were unable to do so. And guys, what about Oswald himself? He defected to the Soviet Union in '69, as we said, returned to the U.S. with his Russian bride, and was under surveillance by both the FBI and the CIA. So how was he able to slip out like that? He claimed, and I can see it, that he was a patsy and denied shooting anyone. Yeah, that one's a little harder to swallow. 2 days later, Jack Ruby, who had the mob connections, as we had mentioned in the earlier segment, shot him in the basement of the Dallas police station. Ruby claimed he did it to spare Jack Kennedy, but many believe he was silencing Oswald because of the mob and CIA connections, and didn't want the actual truth of who wanted Kennedy off and actually finished the job to come to light. And, it's tying to the fact that, there are witnesses to it who died under very mysterious circumstances. And nowadays, there are people who are witnesses to things like the Epstein case and things like that also die under mysterious circumstances or have stuff on Obama, for example. Over 100 people connected to the Kennedy case died in years following the assassination. Some in accidents, some by suicide, some by murder. Statistically, probably just a coincidence, but it's enough to keep those conspiracy fires burning, as it were. And, then there's the question of the missing files. The CIA and FBI it's been proven that they have withheld thousands of documents for decades. And we'll get into those documents here in a little bit on the next segment, or in a little while in one of our next segments. Even today, with all the declassification that's happened, some files still remain classified. They're trying to get those unsealed too. But by doing that, they're still fueling the speculation that the government is still hiding things. And, I once tried to get my hands on some government records for a college project back in the day. I thought I was going to uncover some big, mysterious secret. What I got was a stack of heavily redacted pages, with whole paragraphs and sometimes entire pages completely blacked out. It was like reading a Mad Libs written by a paranoid librarian. Yeah. If that's what they give to college kids, imagine what's still locked away in the vaults. Now, what we're going to dive into next is what I was just mentioning a little while ago, and that's actually the declassification of those specific files. Most of them, probably not all of them, but we're getting there. But we're going to touch on that here in just a moment. I'm going to take another quick ad break. This is the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be right back here in just a moment. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK, or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back to the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. And now, as I just mentioned, we were going through some of the evidence throughout this conspiracy theory of the JFK assassination. And in that same vein, let's go ahead and let's talk about something that's been making headlines in just this past year or two. The new wave of JFK assassination files that have finally been declassified now that we've got the right administration back in office. Because you know as well as I do, if the old guard was still in power, this wouldn't have been happening. That's right, folks. After 6 decades, the government is still trickling out documents like a leaky faucet, and every single time they do, the conspiracy world lights up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. But in this case, they at least opened up the spigot a little bit more, and we got a nice steady stream of files that have come down the pipeline. So what exactly is in these new files? Are they the smoking gun we've been waiting for, or just more redacted pages and bureaucratic memos about lunch orders in the CIA? Well, it's actually a little bit of both. Again, let's set the stage. Let's rewind the clock, shall we? Back in 92, after Oliver Stone's JFK movie basically shamed Congress into taking actual action, the JFK Records Act was passed, mandating that all assassination-related documents be released by no later at the time than 2017. But, of course, you know, it's the way our government, lovely government, works. In true government fashion, they missed that deadline. Then they missed the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Every year, presidents would sign off on keeping some files secret, what they quoted for national security reasons. I mean, seriously, guys, like, what are you hiding in these things? Alien autopsies? I mean, did JFK have, was he buddy with a Gray? I mean, what are we talking about here? The Colonel's secret recipe, the actual Coke ingredients. I mean, dude, seriously, why? I mean, maybe something as highly kept of a secret as, why the McDonald's ice cream machines are always broken. I mean, seriously, big deal. What's the big deal? But finally, thankfully, in 2025, a huge batch of files hit the public, and it's easily accessible now on a public website. We're talking thousands of pages, guys, FBI memos, CIA cables, State Department reports, and even some handwritten notes from people who were in the thick of it. Like, you'll see LBJ's true colors coming out even more by way of these files that were finally redacted. And guys, as you would expect, once these were finally released, Twitter, the internet, social media, there was a massive nuclear explosion of massive proportions. Even Reddit threads exploded like wildfire. Reddit had traffic of levels it hadn't seen in many years. YouTube channels started popping up left and right, trying to break down all of the files that were declassified or unhidden. The word, I don't know if it's really a word, but they suddenly had more content than they knew what to do with. They had so many bullets in their chamber that they were able to dig through. Even TikTok, mighty TikTok, even they got in on the action. There's nothing quite like watching a 19-year-old in a Che Guevara t-shirt explain why the Bay of Pigs, trying to explain to you the Bay of Pigs in 60 seconds or less. I mean, yeah, that is really something that happened. So, with all of this content that was finally revealed and disclosed, what did we learn? Well, for starters, a lot of these new files confirm what many researchers have suspected for years, that the CIA and the FBI were keeping tabs on Oswald long before Dallas happened. There are memos showing, that Oswald's name came up in a connection with a pro-Castro group, anti-Castro groups, and even Soviet contacts, as we had mentioned, with him defecting to Russia. One file details a meeting that Oswald had at the Soviet embassy in Mexico City just weeks before the assassination happened. A meeting that's been the subject of speculation for decades. Was he just a confused drifter, or was he being groomed by someone for something bigger? Most likely the latter of the two. And then there was another bombshell that came out. The files revealed just how much infighting there was between the agencies: CIA, FBI, Secret Service. CIA didn't trust the FBI. FBI didn't trust Secret Service. And nobody trusted the Dallas police. There are memos where agents were basically throwing each other under the bus, trying to cover their own butts. It's like an episode of Veep, if you've ever seen that, but with higher stakes and, at the time, way worse haircuts. Huh. Yeah, back in the 60s, those haircuts were something of a horror story. And then there are the files pertaining to Jack Ruby. Turns out the government was a lot more interested in Ruby's mob connections than they let on. Shock of shocks, I know, guys. There are even reports of Ruby meeting with known mobsters in the months before the assassination, and even some speculation that he was running guns to Cuba. Even he had Castro ties. Was Ruby just a patriotic nightclub owner with a heart of gold? Yeah. Or was he cleaning up loose ends for someone higher up the food chain? Again, most likely the latter. But here's the thing, guys. With the files being out there now, they do answer some questions, and they help open eyes a bit more, and they crack doors open a little bit more than previously. Even though they're answering those questions and cracking the door open more, they're raising even more questions and uncovering even more locked secrets. There's still redactions, unfortunately. Not everything is out there. There are still missing pages, unfortunately. And there's still entire files that are unavailable due to national security. So again, even though we've been promised full disclosure for one reason or another, hasn't happened yet. I mean, come on, guys. Literally been over 60 years. 6 flippin' decades. What could possibly be so sensitive that we can't see it now? What is tied to the current landscape of the United States and the world that you can't let those things come to light 60 years later? I mean, unless, of course, the real conspiracy might be that the government just likes messing with us. We know they do. Way too much. They get their rocks off way too much in that aspect. And guys, sitting here thinking about when those files were finally released, because for like days and days we'd heard they're coming, XYZ, they're coming on this day, on that day, and internet and Twitter was like countdown and and I sit here now and I just gotta laugh because I remember when finally the first batch of files came out. They finally started releasing them. I stayed up all night that night reading them online because I was so excited to dive in and to see what they've been hiding and see if it really blew the roof off of everything they've been trying to keep under wraps. But I remember my wife, she came downstairs. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning, I want to say. She found me hunched over my laptop. My back was freaking killing me by this time, surrounded by my coffee mug. And I even had a Starbucks that we had gotten earlier in the night that I had finished off. And I had a bowl, half-eaten bowl of Doritos. This was prior to my surgery that I had. She just looked at me with this look of derivativeness, shook her head, and was like, you're never going to find the answer, right? And, she's right. She's probably right. But there's something about the chase. There's something about that, constant having to, try and dig deeper and try and be the one that'll break everything open, kind of like Da Vinci Code. The idea that, maybe, just maybe, the next file would be the one that cracks the case wide open. The next, or if you're a paleontologist, the next crack of that hammer could be the one that breaks open the undiscovered dinosaur bone or something like that. Now, pop culture, of course, as I said, they've also jumped all over this as well. There's already a new Netflix docu-series in the works, and I'm pretty sure that HBO is developing a CIA drama about the CIA's Mexico City station. Late night hosts, they've had a field day about this too. Jimmy Kimmel, he's not a late night host. To me, he's a waste of oxygen and should never be anywhere near a television screen, but that's another story for another day. He joked that the only thing more redacted than the JFK files is Trump's tax returns because, late night hosts should always be bashing political figures because that's what you want in your late night host. But again, off on a tangent, get into that in a later date. Even SNL, who again, stick with comedy, guys, stop leaning on the political crap. They did a skit where the files were just turned out to be a recipe for Jell-O and a list of Elvis sightings. So even they jumped on the bandwagon. But for all of the jokes that come out from the different sources, there is a real sense that these new files do actually matter and they do have substance. They're a stark reminder that history is not set in stone. It's a living, breathing thing shaped by the stories we tell, and in doing so, also the secrets that we keep. And every time a new file or a new batch of files is released, it's peeling back another layer of that onion. Sometimes you find something juicy. Sometimes you just end up crying from the fumes. So, guys, what's the takeaway from these files and these declassifications? Well, we know more than we did before, so that's a plus. But the full truth is still out there. X-Files. Somewhere between the redacted lines and the missing pages. Maybe we'll never get the whole story, at least not in our lifetimes. Maybe that's the point. But as long as there are new files to read, new theories to debate, and new late night snacks to fuel the search, The mystery of his search or mystery of his assassination and the search to find the truth behind it will live on. And if you're like me, a massive conspiracy theorist and history buff, you're going to keep digging because who knows? Maybe the next file will finally tell us who really did kill JFK, or, at least give us a new theory to think about during Thanksgiving. All right, guys. So we've got two more segments here on the Smorgasbord episode with John Knopick. Next one we're going to be diving into is the cover-ups, the theories, and pop culture. And we're going to be digging into those here in just a moment. We're going to be taking another quick ad break. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for listening, tuning in, and we'll be right back. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK, or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys, welcome back, and thank you so much for tuning in or listening on your podcast feeds. This is the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick, and we're going to be getting into two more segments here on this episode. The first one revolves around the cover-ups, theories, and pop culture of the JFK assassination theory. Now, let's talk about how the way that this theory and this event has seeped its way and woven its way into the fabric of pop culture. Now, the Warren Commission's report, again, as we mentioned, was released all the way back in 1964, 61 years ago, but many of the documents were classified for decades. The House Select Committee on Assassinations in the late 70s found evidence of a probable conspiracy, but again, at the time, no definitive answers. Now, in 92, Congress passed the JFK Records Act, mandating the release of all documents and assassination-related files. Tens of thousands of pages have been released up to this very date, but some files remain classified even today, fueling that ongoing speculation that the government is still hiding something, which they are. Hollywood has had its field day over the years and decades with this assassination. Oliver Stone's film JFK in 91 popularized the idea of a massive government conspiracy and helped really kick off conspiracy theories, put it into the mainstream. It introduced millions to the back end of the left argument and the idea of a coup d'etat. The film was so influential at the time and still is to this day that it led directly to the passage of that very same JFK Records Act. Now, back in the 90s, again, another conspiracy theory-related television show, one that I love very, very much, was called The X-Files. Mulder and Scully chased down more than a few leads that led back to that JFK assassination. There's even an episode where the smoking man is revealed to be the man on the grassy knoll. Now, if you want to know or are curious how deep this actual rabbit hole goes, just look at how many TV shows, movies, books have all referenced the case. There was even a book, I don't remember the exact name of the exact title of the book, but it was released that dove into the theory of what would have happened to the world had JFK not been assassinated. And this book essentially allowed this individual he found this individual was living in the Texas area, and inside of a restaurant, he actually found that there was a portal that took him back to a time prior to the assassination of Kennedy. And in that book, he was able to, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys in case you want to check it out, but he was able to go back in time and prevent the assassination from happening. And there was a bunch of things tied into it. And it looked at the world from a multiverse perspective. And I believe it actually might have been called something like 316 or something like no. It was the date of the assassination itself. But yeah, check it out because they not only released a book with that, but there was also a Hulu miniseries that was based off of the book as well. So again, as I said, even nowadays, the JFK assassination is still mainstream media tied into different things. And the assassination has, in addition, has inspired countless books, documentaries, podcasts, miniseries, as I said, and even video games. It's become a cultural touchstone, if you were, a symbol of lost innocence, government mistrust, because we got that, and the birth of modern conspiracy culture. And let's be honest, guys, some of the theories out there are exceptionally wild. There's the badge man theory, the three tramps, the idea that the driver did it, although that one might have a little more validity than the other ones, or even that Kennedy's body was altered before the autopsy. That one, a little harder to come by. Some even claim the assassination was faked and Kennedy lived out his days in secret. They may be mixing that up with Adolf Hitler, and we will do an episode on his life in a future episode if you guys are interested. And I remember my Uncle Johnny, who was convinced that the moon landing was faked, and I'm somewhat in that camp as well. He once told me that the same people who staged the moon landing, Stanley Kubrick, I believe it was, also staged the JFK assassination. I asked him if he thought Kubrick was involved, and he just winked at me. Guys, you cannot make this stuff up. But again, we'll do a moon landing conspiracy theory episode down the road as well. But at the heart of all of this is one simple question. Why do so many people refuse to believe the official story? Maybe it's because the idea that one disgruntled loner could change the course of history with an ineffective weapon and a less than stellar shooting history or shooting ability. Maybe it's because that idea that loner could change history is too terrifying. So they just don't want to buy into it. Maybe, just maybe it's because the truth is really out there, buried in a file waiting to be discovered. Maybe the fact that you shouldn't always trust what the government said. There's a song by Diamond Rio that I love. It's called "It's All in Your Head," and right before the chorus, he goes, "We never walked on the moon. Elvis ain't dead. You ain't going crazy. It's just all in your head." And it's all for interpretation, guys, and it's very true. And never take anything at face value. As I said, question everything, guys, because if you take everything at face value, you're going to end up just becoming, unfortunately, a mindless, brainwashed sheep. And that's what they want you to be. They want you to comply, not ask questions, and just go along with the narrative that they're passing out. But thankfully, nowadays, with social media and everybody starting to open their eyes more, and the people behind the scenes trying to keep things under wraps becoming sloppier and sloppier, it's becoming more along the lines of conspiracy theorists aren't nut jobs. They're just fact tellers who haven't been proven right yet. But once the truth comes out, those theories become facts. So we've got one more segment, and that's my favorite segment of throughout all of my episodes, and that, of course, is listener stories and my closing thoughts. We're going to dive into that here in just one quick second, one more ad break to wrap it all up. You're listening to the Smorgasbord with me, John Knopick. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll be right back here with our closing segment. Stick around. Hey there, Smorgasbord listeners. Whether you're here for wrestling smackdowns, wild conspiracy theories, political hot takes, or just my questionable life advice, I want to hear from you. Hit me up on social media at SmorgasbordJK, or go full keyboard warrior and email me at john@knopickventures.com. Your message might just make it onto the show. Unless it's about pineapple on pizza, then you might want to rethink your life choices. Don't be a stranger. Now let's get back to the chaos on the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back. This is the Smorgasbord. I am John Knopick, and now it's time for my favorite part of every single episode, your stories and your thoughts. I asked you guys on social media prior to this episode for your takes on the JFK assassination. And of course, as always, you guys did not disappoint. First up, we have a message from Alex Jenkins out of Dallas, Texas. Ironic. John, he says, my grandfather was actually in Dealey Plaza that day. Wow. He always said he'd heard shots from the Grassy Knoll, not the book depository. He never trusted the official story, nor should you, and neither do I. Every Thanksgiving, our family debates the case over turkey and stuffing. It's become our weird tradition. Alex, first off, I have to say I love your weird tradition. I have weird traditions of my own with my family, and it helps to break the monotony of just family get-together. So I'm glad you guys have set up a tradition. Unfortunately, it had to be tied to this kind of an event, but it's cool that you guys have got that. Nothing says family bonding like arguing about ballistics and government cover-ups over a heaping helping of mashed potatoes. So good on you, Alex. Thanks for the comment. Next, we have a message from Maria Stevenson out of Boston, Massachusetts. Maria says, I was born years after JFK died, but my parents always talked about how the country changed that day. And I hear that a lot too. My dad said, like, with 9/11, feel the exact same way. My dad says it was the moment he stopped trusting the government. I think that's why so many people are to this day still obsessed with the case. It's about more than just one man. It's about trust, power, and who really runs the show. Maria, you absolutely knocked that one out of the park 100 million%. This JFK assassination is way more than just being about a murder. It's about the soul of a nation and how our lives and everything we know and love was taken away from us from that day. Going forward, the world and has never been the same since. Thank you very much for sending that message in, Maria. Greatly appreciated. And finally, a message from Sam Mitchell out of LA. Sam, lucky bug, you're out in SoCal. Missed that place. Sam says, I'm a filmmaker, and the Zapruder film is like the holy grail of conspiracy footage. Couldn't agree with you more. I've watched it frame by frame 100 times, and I still can't say for sure what happened. But I do know this. The more you learn, the less you know. That's true. And that's what keeps me coming back. Me too, Sam. Absolutely me too. And that is the spirit. Search for truth is never ending, and sometimes the journey is actually more important and sometimes more fun than reaching the destination itself. And you know, guys, I've actually had my own debates about this stuff. My cousin is convinced that the CIA did it. My father, when I was talking to him before he had our falling out, he felt it was the mob that was behind it. And my mom at the time just wanted everyone to just stop yelling at Christmas. So yeah, we got into some pretty animated discussions around the holidays. And my mom was just like, guys, hand me the gravy and shut up. I loved her to death. It's the one this is one of the topics that can literally get everybody talking for hours on end. And sometimes it ends up coming to shouting and more animated verbiage, no matter how many years have passed. And as we wrap up today's episode, just keep this in mind. Remember that the JFK assassination is a story that refuses and most likely will never die. As long as things are redacted, as long as things are kept under wraps, you're never going to hear the end of it. Maybe we will never know the full truth in our lifetimes. But maybe the real conspiracy is just how much we want to believe that there's more to the story. But as long as people keep asking questions, that mystery will never, ever, ever die. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on the Smorgasbord today. Hope you guys are full. Hope you guys had a nice big heaping helping of JFK conspiracy to fill your gullets and keep you satisfied before our next episode. And if you like what you heard, of course, please subscribe wherever you guys are listening to me on any of your podcast feeds. Give me a follow on YouTube. Give me a follow on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. leave a review, and of course, please, please, please share the show with someone who loves a good mystery and loves a good conspiracy. Again, you can find me on all social media platforms at the Smorgasbord JK, or email me at john at knoppicventures.com. Next week, we're going to be diving into another wild topic. Don't know what it's going to be yet. Maybe it'll be driven by some fan feedback. So stay tuned. We're going to have another fun episode next week. And again, this has been the Smorgasbord with John Knopick. I, of course, am John Knopick. And as always, as we always love to close out every episode, ladies and gentlemen, take my advice. Pull down your pants, slide on the ice. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Adios.